Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back, everybody. What's up, what's up, what's up, my peoples? Hello, Passion. Hello, Livy. Granny, Flawless. Mom, how you doing? Ty. Indigo, low down. Classy J. What's up, what's up, what's up, ladies? How's everybody doing? Say hello to my guest, Miss Empowered Esquire TV. Say hello to everyone in the chat, lady.
Hello, everyone. How are you? I hope you're having a good night.
So this is our guest tonight. She is an attorney, she is an entrepreneur, and she's also an educator. She works in law. She was a prosecutor, and she is currently an attorney dealing with corporate. Correct.
Right. General civil litigation, trademark, copyright. Sometimes I dabble in immigration, but for the most part, just general civil litigation.
By the way, everyone, microphone check. Do we sound good? Any echoes? What's going on? Do everybody hear us loud and clear? Give me a one in the chat. I guess they hear
1
us.
2 1 2.
Hello.
I think so.
Do you guys hear us? I guess
I don't
so,
see anyone
right?
saying that they can't hear us. So.
Right. So we good. All
Yes.
right. Awesome. Thank you
All
so much,
right.
Larry's minion. What's up, Larry? What's up, Miss April? Hello. All right. So I'm going to present to you guys a little bit about Miss Esquire and what she does. So I will be sharing my screen. And we will going to share her video and her introduction video. Hold on. Give me 1 second, guys. Uh-oh, where's it at? Where did it go? Oh, here it
is. Hello, and welcome to Empowered Esquire. I am Felicia D.C. Pearson, Esquire, of course. I'm a practicing attorney, a total trial nerd, a law nerd, of course, and just, an all-around nerd, right? And on this channel, we discuss fascinating legal issues, everything from pop culture to relevant cases in the media. And we discuss how the legal concepts in these cases affect our everyday lives. We have a space in which we can have honest conversation about the law, about the way that it is applied, and quite frankly, about where there may be some gaps in the law that perhaps need our attention. We will also have a true crime series where we will explore real life cases, whether it involves someone in pop culture or not, and also where we will discuss some of these unsolved missing persons cases. For those of you who, may be unaware, there is a major, I think at this point, epidemic level of missing persons, especially missing women of color in this country, that at this point demands attention. And that is also a conversation that we will have. I will upload videos every Friday. So if you click the little notification bell, you'll get the notification and you'll know that a new video is available. I will, of course, review comments. So unfortunately, but fortunately for everyone else, if you try to leave a comment that has profanity or hate speech or bullying or anything of that nature, right? Anything that violates the YouTube conditions and terms, it will not be posted. So I recommend being respectful, right? Not only because it's the right thing to do, because it's the right thing to do, but also because your comment won't see the light of day otherwise. I will have my information, contact information in the description box below. And welcome to a space where you are free to ask questions. You are free to be a critical thinker. You are free to have an opinion regarding this big gargantuan system that is the legal world that is really in motion in every aspect of your life, whether you know it or not. So I will see you next Friday. We'll be starting with Jay Morrison and the Tulsa Real Estate Fund. We will look at the contract that subscribers or investors have to sign and talk about whether it's a legal contract or not, and what causes of action some of these investors might have to maybe get their money back. See you soon.
And that is Miss Empowered Esquire TV. I am going to put her channel in the chat. Please follow, subscribe. Oh, whoa, what happened here? Wait a minute. Hold on, guys. I don't know what happened here.
It's good theme music.
Sorry, y'all. Somebody else's video started playing.
I'm thinking, whoa, she has theme music and everything. Wow, this is really good.
That was funny. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Now, I'm sorry once again, guys. I apologize about that. I'm going to drop her link. By the way, she will be doing some commentary tomorrow.
Yes, I'm actually live every Sunday at 5. I ended up changing the pre-recorded drops on Friday to lives on Sunday because that was more preferred.
There you go. She accommodates her people, guys. Let me hold on. I'm getting right there. And then I'm going to drop her video and we're going to watch her view a little bit on what she thinks about the R. Kelly case and the indictment that she read so far and her breakdown of the understanding of the indictment. I'm going to put it in now. Let me see. Okay, guys, I pinned it. I'm going to pin it. What the heck? Okay, hold on. Why did it take me back here? Sorry. Oh, my phone is tweaking out here. Give me one moment, guys. Sorry. No. Why does it keep taking me back? Okay, for some reason, it's not letting me pin it right now. So weird. Okay, why is it not letting me pin? Okay, it's not letting me pin it for some reason. All right. Well, anyway, guys, I put the link in the chat. Please go follow and subscribe. Hit the notification bell on all so you guys can catch my girl whenever she is on. Like she said, she would be doing Sunday lives. And who will you be talking about tomorrow?
Tomorrow, we are talking about the trial of Ronnie O'Neal. He's the man from Florida who's being accused of murdering his daughter and his daughter's mother.
Yeah, I want to find out about that. I didn't catch up on that story. I haven't heard of the story, so I will be catching that up with you for sure.
Thank
That
you.
sounds
It's an
crazy.
interesting story indeed.
Yeah, that sounds crazy. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce your other video. Okay. Let's get it together. Come on. Okay. Let me pause it. All right. I will be sharing my screen again with you guys. And the title of her video is The People versus R. Kelly. A real lawyer reacts to the criminal case. All right. Here we go. Wait, I got to share my screen. Oh, okay.
People v. R. Kelly. We will be discussing the numerous cases right now to federal prosecutions. So we'll first kind of discuss the history of how we got here, right? So exactly what jurisdictions have pending criminal cases against R. Kelly and what those charges are, and then get into what's going on in R. Kelly's case right now. So I'm going to take a moment to post in the chat, say hello to everyone, and also do a volume check. If you can hear me well, you can see me well, give me a thumbs up or one in the chat so I know that I can be seen and heard. We'll say hello, and then we'll jump right in. So I'll just wait one moment, make sure everyone can hear me and see me. Hi, hello, Mello. Okay, awesome. Yeah, give me a thumbs up or one in the chat to let me know you can hear me. Awesome. Hi, Pocket Watching with JT. How are you? Wonderful. Crime Spotter. Hi, how's it going? Okay, good. So I'm getting a lot of ones that everyone can see me and hear me, which is awesome. All righty. All righty. So we're going to dive right in. I'm not going to, stall too much. We've been on for only about a minute or so, right? So we'll kind of slowly walk our way into the R. Kelly case. So as I said, we're going to start with what these cases are. So what jurisdictions are prosecuting him and what they are charging him with. We're going to break down those charges. We're going to actually look at the indictments that were filed. So we will look at the actual court documents. You guys know that the big thing for me on my channel is to teach you and show you how to find real court documents and accurate court documents. So you're not listening to gossip online or he say, she say, right? You're going straight to the source. You're getting true and accurate information, okay? So let's get started. I am going to share my screen. I have everything queued up for you, so we'll jump right in. All righty, here we go. So let us first start. I'm already on a page. All right, let's make it full screen. So here we have a press release from the Northern District of Illinois, right? So you see here, Department of Justice, U.S. Attorney's Office, Northern District of Illinois. So teaching moment. Most prosecutorial offices, they have something that they call a press case. What that means is the case either involves someone who is very high profile or involves a hot button issue, and it will most definitely be in the press. Whenever something is a press case, usually the prosecuting office will issue a press release. So what we are looking at here is a press release that was issued by, as you can see, the Department of Justice, U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Illinois. Now, if you're unfamiliar with federal offices and the Department of Justice, our country is divided into districts. And each district has its own federal system. That includes your Department of Justice that has either your U.S. Attorney's Office or your United States, or your Attorney General's Office, right? Or something of that nature. So every single area has a district which has its own Department of Justice office and agencies within that office, okay? So here you have it for immediate release. Release when? Friday, July 12th, 2019. Recording artist R. Kelly arrested on federal child and obstruction charges. Chicago recording artist Robert Sylvester Kelly, also known as R. Kelly, has been arrested on federal blank charges and obstruction charges. A 13-count indictment returned Thursday in the United States District Court in Chicago charges Kelly with producing and receiving blank and enticing minors to engage in criminal blank activity. So the press release goes on to say exactly how R. Kelly was arrested, right? And also it mentions that his indictment also charges 2 former employees of his music business, Daryl McDavid, who is 58, also of Chicago, and Milton Brown, also known as June Brown, 53, also of Chicago. The indictment was announced by John R. Losh Jr., United States Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois. James M. Gibbons, Special Agent in charge of the United States Immigration and Custom Enforcement Homeland Security Investigation in Chicago, and Tara Sullivan, Acting Special Agent in charge of the Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigation Division in Chicago. Now, why is it important? Why did they need to discuss here who is announcing this indictment, right? Here is why that is important. Because that section in the press release tells you who was involved in your investigation and what R. Kelly is being charged with. So you know right off the bat, he's being charged with criminal charges, right? You see United States Attorney for the Northern District. But then you see Immigration and Custom Enforcement. So you know that there's some implication in here that he broke some type of immigration and customs law as well. Then you see we already mentioned that. Then you see the Internal Revenue Service, right? So you know that also there's an implication that some of this criminal activity implicated some type of income, right? Because the IRS was also involved. So it's important to look out for these press releases, right? Again, as I said, justice.gov, the Department of Justice will release their own official press release. It is more likely for you to get accurate information from them, right, than any of these media outlets, okay? So they talk about who's involved in the prosecution. They then go on to give you a little bit of details about the indictment, which is the norm. And down here, they mention exactly why the IRS is involved. The indictment also seeks forfeiture of a personal money judgment of approximately $1.55 million, right? So as I said, once you see the IRS is involved, you know there's some financial crime being implicated as well, okay? They then go on to tell you, hey, listen, the public is reminded that charges contain only accusations and are not evidence of guilt, okay? They also tell you in these press releases, another reason why they're so amazing, what type of prison sentence the person could be facing. So they tell you producing blank carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years in prison and a maximum of 20 years. Teaching moment. This minimum 10 years in prison, you guys, with a maximum of 20 years is per count, not per case. So when we look at the indictment and we see how many counts of this producing blank that he's charged with, you can do the math and figure out how much time he's facing, okay? They then go on to say receiving blank and conspiring to receive it is a mandatory minimum sentence of 5 years in prison and a maximum of 20 years. The maximum sentence for enticement of a minor is 10 years. Conspiracy to obstruct justice is punishable by up to 5 years, okay? So here they have a link here where you can see the actual indictment, and we will go there. But before we do that, I want to hop out of here for a moment and take any questions about the press release. Do we have any questions about the press release that we just looked at from the Northern District of Illinois? Hello, Mello. I love that you said in the chat, I'm asking, is this pointing to MEX trafficking? I love your play on words there. And yes, it is. By the way, you guys, when I go live, I have 3 ring lights. So it gets pretty toasty, right? So you may see me do a little dab. Okay. So I don't see any questions about the press release. So I'm going to jump straight into the actual indictment. Okay. All right, we are back. So here is the actual indictment from the Northern District of Illinois. So again, when we talk about court documents, let me make this maximum for you guys. So again, when we talk about court documents, we talked about this section, you know, this is your case caption, right? So you see it is the United States of America. That tells you that this is a federal case. You don't see the people of the state of Illinois. You don't see the people of the state of New York, right? You see the United States of America. That means this is a federal case. Then you see Robert Sylvester Kelly, R. Kelly, Daryl McDavid, which they mentioned, and Milton Brown, also known as June Brown. You also see the titles that they are being charged with violating, the federal law. So let's dive right in. Count 1. In or around 1998 or 1999 in Chicago, Robert Sylvester Kelly, also known as R. Kelly, did knowingly employ, use, persuade, induce, entice, and coerce a minor, namely minor 1. Pause. Whenever you see a charging document that mentions minors, more than likely you will see some type of pseudonym. It could be Jane Doe or John Doe, or in this instance, it could be minor 1 or minor 2. That is done to protect the identity of the minors. Minors have heightened privacy protections because they are underage, okay? So namely minor 1, to engage in sexually explicit conduct for the purpose of producing a visual depiction of such conduct, namely video 1. Another teaching moment. When you see the charging document referring to things by some type of name, such as video 1, video 2, that's your hint that they actually have the video. So this is not a sort of conspiracy to do something. This is not them thinking that he did something. This is them actually having possession of the video, which is why they have to identify it as video 1 so that the court knows what piece of evidence they're referring to. So namely video 1. And defendant knew or had reason to know that such visual depiction would be transported in interstate or foreign commerce or mailed, or such visual depiction was actually transported in interstate or foreign commerce or mailed in violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 2251A. So, wow, that was a lot of SAT words and legalese. So let's break it down. This is a charge to create mild pornography. That's what it is. It says that it accuses that Robert Kelly somehow convinced a minor, whether he did that by some type of persuasion, right? Which would be me just convincing you to do something, or coercion, which would be me threatening you. He did get a minor to engage in conduct that was then turned into a video. And then he either knew that that video would be shared interstate, or he had some reason to know that it would be shared interstate, right? And another one of your key words here is when you see interstate commerce, that's the trigger that triggers federal law a lot of times, okay? So the moving interstate, the committing crimes and then going from one state to the next, that is how a defendant gets themselves, you know, in the eyesight of the federal government. So you see that they quoted a law here, right? Title 18, United States Code, Section 2251. So why don't we see what that is? So here, you know, one of my favorite tools, your Cornell Law School Legal Information Institute. And here we have U.S. Code Title 18, Section 2251, the sexual exploitation of children. So this is the actual section of the law that R. Kelly is being charged under. Now, remember, they mentioned Section A, right? Well, here you have it, Section A. Any person who employs, uses, persuades, induces, entices, or coerces. So you see the language? Notice that a charging document mirrors the language that is in the law. It has to do that because it has to be sufficient in its accusations for you to actually be prosecuted with it, right? You do have constitutional rights which say that the agency prosecuting you should be able to have some level of proof. So that is why your charging document, which is your indictment or your complaint if you're in a state court, is going to mirror the actual law. And so you see, they just kind of reiterate what was already in the charging document, right? It's coercing or persuading a minor to engage in some type of sexual conduct, and then creating a visual depiction of that conduct for the purpose of transmitting it or knowing that it could be transmitted. Okay, so let's go back to our indictment. You see, that's count 1. Notice that the indictment is broken into different counts. And remember, each of these counts is anywhere from 5 years in prison to 20 years in prison. Remember that the press release told us that. Okay, so count 1, count 2 is more of the same, but note video 2, you guys. So now we know they have 2 videos, right? Let's see if there's any more. Count 3, again, video 3, okay? And notice this is still minor 1. So this is still the same minor. Now we're at 3 videos that they are accusing Robert Kelly of having in his possession, engaging in creating and knowing that that was going to be transported in some way, okay? Now count 4, minor 1, video 4. So we are at 4 videos with this minor, okay? Count 5. Now they're talking about some of the things that are what is called material to this indictment, so important to this indictment. They discuss the fact that R. Kelly is an artist, a recording artist, right, who also has a company, which they call the Kelly businesses, okay? They then go on to talk about who Daryl McDavid is. They say that Daryl McDavid is Kelly's business manager. Okay, so now we know who he is. They then talk about Milton Brown, and he's just named as an employee of R. Kelly. Now we're getting into it. Now we're getting into how many minors the Northern District of Illinois is saying they can prove R. Kelly was involved with in a sexual way. So they have minor 1, who met Kelly when she was approximately 12 or 13 years old, allegedly. Minor 2, who met Kelly when she was approximately 17 years old, allegedly. Minor 3, who met Kelly when she was approximately 15 years old, allegedly. Minor 4, who met Kelly when she was approximately 16 years old, allegedly. Minor 5, who met Kelly when she was approximately 13 or 14 years old. So we have victims, alleged victims, as young as 12 and as old as 17. They then go on to say and accuse R. Kelly of engaging in sexual conduct. I already messed it up. You guys know me and these algorithms, and sexual acts with all of these minors when they were under the age of 18. They then go on to accuse R. Kelly of recording himself on video, engaging in this contact and these acts with these minors. So they are pretty much accusing in this indictment that they have videos of R. Kelly with all 5 of these minors. All right. And then they go on to confirm what we already knew, right? Video 1, 2, 3, and 4 all depict him having contact with minor 1 when minor 1 was under the age of 18. They then go on to discuss when this investigation began. So they tell you right here that in approximately April 2000, so approximately around that time, they started to investigate whether or not R. Kelly was sexually abusing minor 1. So it reads that minor 1 is the one who triggered this investigation. They then go on to say that in 2002, there was an indictment returned, right? And that in relation to video 1 and minor 1, R. Kelly was acquitted of those charges. So many of you remember that case, right? The case in which he was actually charged and he was actually cleared in that case, right? So it appears that even after he was acquitted of that particular case, the investigation continued. Now they talk about what Darrell McDavid is charged with, which, yeah, not very important to us, right? So we are going to kind of skip past that for the interest of time. But I will put the link to this indictment in the chat if you really want to read more about that. But here is what we will mention, though, because remember, the IRS is involved. Okay, so let's talk about those allegations. So here they allege that between approximately 2001 and 2009, R. Kelly and this person, Darrell McDavid, individual A, and some others, which they call individual B, were paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for obtaining and returning multiple videos that they knew depicted Kelly in a contact and in certain acts with a minor. So this reads that there were some individuals who ended up in possession of these videos, and that R. Kelly, by way of McDavid, right, this person, allegedly paid these people to get the video back, right? So what does that say? That says a lot of things for the implication of these accusations. Here's the first thing. It says that Robert Kelly allegedly had knowledge that these videos were being shared with other people. That's the first thing. The next thing it says is that he was somehow actively involved in these videos, right? It wasn't some other person. Because were it some other person, why would he allegedly pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to get it back, right? Okay, it now goes on to say that in early 2007, R. Kelly and McDavid allegedly paid minor two, so paid another minor to retrieve, so $250,000 for this minor to return a tape that they knew that this minor was in possession of, that had Kelly on the tape allegedly engaged in certain type of contact and certain acts, right? So now we have another minor who was involved allegedly with R. Kelly. Somehow that minor actually has a tape, and we have R. Kelly paying that minor to get the tape back. That's the accusation. Again, the same two implications, right? You know it's being shared, allegedly, and it has to have you in it, or else you would not be so invested in getting it back. Now, in the law, that is something called admission of guilt, right? When someone behaves in a way that tells you, you have to be somehow implicated in this. You have to be somehow implicated because you're so invested in it, okay? So they go on to talk about some more instances in which R. Kelly allegedly paid people who somehow had these tapes for them to return them, okay? And it goes into that some more. It then goes on to talk about the parent of a minor who somehow ended up with the videotape, right? It mentions that as well. It then goes on to talk about the obstruction of justice portion of this. So if you're unfamiliar with the charge of obstruction of justice, it is a charge that is reserved for someone who is somehow intervening with, involving themselves with a criminal investigation in a way that makes it difficult for the investigation to proceed. So it's reserved for someone who is allegedly hiding evidence, threatening witnesses so they won't testify, things like that, right? So let's see what the allegations are here. It was further part of the conspiracy that Kelly, McDavid, and others agreed to intimidate, threaten, pressure, persuade, and provide benefits and money to victims, victims' family members, witnesses, and others to ensure that they would destroy, conceal, cover up, falsify, and make a false entry in a record, document, and tangible object, and to continue to abide by previous false statements. So again, quite a bit of legalese, right? So let's break it down. In other words, they are accusing Robert Kelly and this gentleman, Darrell McDavid, of telling people, hey, we will hurt you if you testify. Or, hey, if I give you some money, will you not testify? And or if you do testify, will you say that nothing happened? That is the accusation. Okay. And there are some more details on those accusations online and on, several places on YouTube. There are quite a few people online who have accused R. Kelly of actually paying for victims to go on a vacation around the time of this investigation so that they wouldn't be available to be questioned. Okay. So the indictment goes on to talk more about the conspiracy. Again, more of the same, right? And you see here this section where they talk about overt acts. There is a reason that they're calling these acts overt, right? That's the level of proof that the government has to have when they're accusing someone of a conspiracy. And so your question is, well, what is a conspiracy? Well, a conspiracy is when you have one or more people, right, bonded together with a plan to do something illegal. To prove that these people had that plan, the government has the burden of proving that they took what is called overt acts to actually go forward with that plan. So here's an example. Let's say John and David say that they're going to rob a bank, right? It is not enough for them to just text, oh, we're going to rob, the Chase Bank on Acton Street. That's not enough. They have to actually do something to show that they mean it, to show, yeah, we're really going to do this. So perhaps they went to the store and they all bought black clothing and ski masks because that's what they agreed to wear. Perhaps they went and rented a car and then took the license plates off that car to use it as a getaway vehicle. These are the type of actions that the government have to prove to meet their burden of proof as far as conspiracy, right? So that is the reason that they're labeling this overt acts and that they're going into what they're saying R. Kelly and McDavid actually did in conspiracy with each other to interfere with the investigation and to purport the use of these videos, right? So here you have McDavid on Kelly's behalf, allegedly, received a video from minor 2 and individual C that depicted Kelly in contact with minor 1 and minor 2, right? And they go on to discuss some more of the overt acts that they can use to say, hey, McDavid and R. Kelly allegedly committed these crimes together. Now you see they go into count 6, and in count 7 as well, they talk some more about videos, right? Video 2 and video 3. And they go on to have several counts where they discuss each video, right? So the breakdown of it is that each video has its own count, okay? Again, they go into minor 3. Now, in this count, they say that, or they accuse R. Kelly of using the mail or any facility and means of interstate and foreign commerce to, again, persuade, entice, induce someone who had not attained the age of 18 years of age to engage in some type of activity. Now, here they quote section 2422B, okay? And I believe, I thought we had that up, but it looks like we have 243, which is fine. You guys know where to find that at this point, right? And we'll just round out this indictment so I can take some questions. Count 13, right? So keep note of how many counts there. So 13 criminal counts, okay? And then they get into the forfeiture, okay? So here's what the forfeiture is based on. They note here that any property constituting and traceable to gross profits and other proceeds obtained from such offense. So when you see the word forfeiture, the government is saying we are claiming rights to some type of money or asset that this defendant has, and we want to be paid that money or given that asset. So here in this first count here, you have the IRS pretty much saying, we believe that R. Kelly made some type of money from these videos. And whatever he made from these videos, whatever profit he obtained, he owes that to us because he obtained those profits illegally. Okay, and that is the end of your 25-page indictment from the Northern District of Illinois. I'm going to hop out of this screen and take some questions. So hello, everyone. Any questions about this indictment or about the charges from the Northern District of Illinois? Oh, I see some questions already. having my water. You guys know I always have my water and my little towel here. Okay, so Crime Spotter wants to know, can the victim's family members be charged for receiving the money? And does that blank some charges? I don't know what the blank is for. But yes, the victim's family members can be charged. It is unlikely though. And here's why. So it is unlikely that the victim's family members will be charged because in order to build your case, so for those of you who are unaware, the government has to prove these charges beyond a reasonable doubt. That is a high burden, Crime Spotter. That's a high standard. So more than likely, they need the victim's family members to be witnesses. So it's not likely that they would charge them, although they could, because technically they were in possession of these videos as well, right? So they could be charged, but it's highly unlikely. What they will more than likely do is say to them, hey, immunity, right? Remember we talked about immunity in the T.I. and Tiny video? Immunity from anything you could be charged with if you testify against Robert Kelly. So that is probably what will happen. Hi to Carla Martin. I think you're new here. Carla Martin wants to know, can you dissect the January 6th attack on the Capitol? Oh, okay. We can put that on our list. We can go for that next, Carla. Okay. Crime Spotter has another question. Oh, unrelated to R. Kelly. Since a federal case proved nothing against Michael Jackson, can his estate sue people who say that he did sexual things to them? There is a potential case there for defamation. Yes, Crime Spotter, and we could discuss that in another video. Are there any questions about the R. Kelly indictment that we just took a look at, or about any of the charges therein? So let's talk about potential prison time from what we just read. So we just looked at what? 13 counts in an indictment in which we know for sure that the minimum sentence is 5 years and the maximum sentence is 20 years. So listen, I'm not pulling up a calculator or anything, but I can tell you right at the outset, in that case that we just looked at, he's facing up to 20 years, give or take some more, in prison. And for a man of Robert Kelly's age, that is a life sentence, really, right? He's in his 50s. You're talking about perhaps your 70s before you have served your sentence, okay? Yes, so hi, Yvonne Diva. Yvonne Diva has an awesome channel. You guys should check her out. But yes, he's facing, in the Illinois case alone, up to 20 years in prison, okay? Crime Spotter wants to know, are there specific media houses that usually cover these cases more than others? Yes. So I recommend the New York Times, and for this kind of case, being that it's in Chicago, the Chicago Tribune, right? Those type of reputable media outlets. You still have to do your own research, but I recommend those. So for those of you who are unaware, oh, let me copy and paste the link for you. I did promise you the link to the indictment, right? So let me do that. So here's a direct link to the indictment. So, I mean, hey, some leisurely reading, if you like. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with this case, he is also facing prosecution in another state, right? He's also facing prosecution in the state of New York. So we are next going to go to, let me make sure everything is queued up for you, the press release from the state of New York and the actual indictment from the state of New York. Now you're going to notice that the New York indictment looks different than the Illinois indictment. So people hear the Department of Justice and they think that it's just one monolith, right? But it's not. As I said, it's so many different agencies and every district has their own agencies. So everyone does things differently. Even when I mentioned the term press case, they may not even call it a press case in Illinois. They might not use that terminology. That might just be New York terminology, right? So notice that things look a little different as you move into different districts, okay? Crime Spotter wants to know, is this a RICO case? There are some racketeering charges. I believe that is in the New York indictment. So let's hop into that. I'm going to share my screen and we are going to hop right on in. All righty, here we go. So let's look at the press release first. So here again, you see we're on justice.gov. Remember, I'm stressing to you guys, whenever it is a case that involves someone of this notability, the Department of Justice is going to do their own press release. So before you believe any of the talk online, look at what they said themselves. So here you have Department of Justice, United States Attorney's Office, Eastern District of New York. So this is yet another federal district, a separate federal case. Here they have R. Kelly charged with racketeering, see, including predicate acts of coercing and transporting minor girls to engage in blank. So they tell you right off the bat, not only are we accusing him of engaging in things with these minors, we are accusing him of transporting them for the purpose of engaging in these things. Again, those are the types of actions that take you from having the state prosecuting you to the federal government prosecuting you, right? When you're talking about transporting minors from one state to another for the purpose of doing something illegal to them or with them. So they then say charged conduct occurred over the course of 2 decades. So over the course of 20 years in New York, Connecticut, Illinois, and California. So let's pause for a moment and do the math on that, right? We're in 2021. You go back 20 years and that's what? 2001. And remember, we know that he was acquitted of that original case back in 2002. So what does that tell you? That tells you that while he was on trial in a state case, because that was the people of Illinois v. R. Kelly. So while R. Kelly was on trial fighting a state case, the federal government was already investigating him and building a federal case. So it is very important to note that, because when you see someone going through a state prosecution and they get acquitted, it is very likely that that is just the beginning of their troubles. Usually when you're on the state's radar, you're on the federal radar as well. All right, so here we go. A 5-count superseding indictment. Superseding indictment just means that they filed an original indictment and then they updated it. They filed a second one. That's it. Was unsealed today in federal court in Brooklyn. That means originally it was sealed, probably because it involves a minor, right? Sealed meaning it wasn't public. And now they've unsealed it, so it's public and you can take a look at it. And it goes on to say, charging R&B singer Robert Sylvester Kelly, also known as R. Kelly, with racketeering predicated on criminal conduct, including sexual exploitation of children, kidnapping. Wow. Now, if you're new here, you may not know the difference between kidnapping and false imprisonment, but some of you who have been around, you know the difference, right? So you know that kidnapping is when you're moving the person from one place to another, okay? Forced labor and Mann Act violations involving the coercion and transportation of women and girls. Another moment, another teaching moment. When they say women and girls, they're not saying that for no reason, right? You guys, these press releases go through at least 4 to 5 hands and 4 to 5 edits before they are released. They're telling you right there that they are charging him not only with trafficking minors, but also with trafficking people who are also of age, right? So women and girls in interstate commerce to engage in illegal sexual activity. Kelly is also charged with 4 counts of violating the Mann Act related to his interstate transportation of a victim to New York to engage in illegal sexual activity and his exposure of her to an infectious venereal disease without her knowledge. Pause. So the Eastern District of New York is accusing R. Kelly of transporting a victim to New York to engage in illegal activity with her and exposing her to some type of STI in the act that he committed with her. Now, again, when you read these things kind of haphazardly, you can glaze over that, but that is extremely important, because if in fact he gave this girl some type of infection or disease, that is proof that he was with her in a sexual way, right? That is undeniable proof that he was with her. So it's going to be extremely hard for R. Kelly to say to this accusation, I was never with her, if in fact they can prove that he gave this victim some type of disease. They also mentioned that he was charged in Illinois, okay? They go on to, again, similar to the other press case, tell you who's involved, right? So here you have Richard P. Donahue, the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of New York. You have Angel M. Melendez, Special Agent in Charge for the United States Department of Homeland Security, right? And then you have James P. O'Neill, the Commissioner for the NYPD. So that tells you that Homeland Security, the United States Attorney, and the NYPD were all working in tandem, all working as a group to investigate and get all the information that they needed, okay? They then go on to give a little bit more detail about what happened. They mention here that for 2 decades, the enterprise, again, keywords, enterprise, that is your trigger for racketeering and conspiracy and things like that, okay? For 2 decades, the enterprise, at the direction of R. Kelly, preyed upon young women and teenagers whose dreams of meeting a superstar soon turned into a nightmare of MAPE, mild pornography, and forced labor. The musician turned predator allegedly used his stardom to coax some victims into nefarious acts, while certain members of his enterprise calculatingly facilitated the aberrant conduct. So from reading that, you can tell that they are accusing R. Kelly of having an enterprise, a system by which he recruited girls, he brought girls in, and that everyone involved in this system knew what they were doing. They knew why these girls were being brought in. They were not confused. They did not think that R. Kelly was actually going to give these girls any type of career, right? Everyone was on the same page. Everyone knew what these girls were being brought in for. That is the accusation, okay? The NYPD gives their little blurb, right? They get their little moment in the sun saying that they are committed to taking down predators, okay? And then the press release goes on to mention again, prison time. They say here in this paragraph, if convicted, Kelly faces a sentence of up to 20 years of imprisonment for the racketeering and 2 Mann Act coercion and enticement counts, respectively. Respectively, meaning what? That's not 20 years in total, okay? And up to 10 years imprisonment for each of the Mann Act transportation counts. So again, for a man of R. Kelly's age, he is facing what is equivalent to the rest of his life in prison, okay? I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. Say hello to everyone who is present. I've given a shout out to most of you, Gavin. I've given a shout out to most of you. Hey, K Business. Hi, Stephanie Collins. Hi, Carla Martin. Let's see who else is here. Hi, Wayne Montgomery. I said hi to Crime Spotter already. I believe I shouted out Hello Mello. Hello, Amare Shager. Okay. Hi, G Thang. Let's see who else is in here. Oh, I think I said hello to everyone. All right, so let me answer some questions. I see Wayne Montgomery wanted to know if Robert Kelly is being accused in multiple districts. He is. We actually looked at the charging document or the indictment from Illinois, and we're about to dive into the charging document from New York. Let's see. Crime Spotter wants to know, when a federal case is closed and it suddenly gets intense media coverage, can it be revisited to see if any victims were placed under duress, even by family members, to settle? Okay, so let's break that down, Crime Spotter. So if it's a criminal case, there's no settlement, right? When you're talking about a settlement, you're talking about a civil case. Now, as to your question of whether or not a case can be closed and reopened, yes. So let's make sure we make some distinctions. You do have something in the United States of America called double jeopardy, right? So for the most part, unless there was a mistrial or a hung jury or something like that, you cannot be charged for the same thing more than once. But investigating and charging are not the same. So let's say there was an investigation, it didn't really go anywhere, and then more evidence is found, absolutely that investigation can be reopened. Yes. Crime Spotter also wants to know if it can't, but the media still covers it, what in their eyes was a miscarriage of justice? What can be done? Not quite understanding that question. So I'll let you rephrase that. Are there any other questions before we actually look at the indictment that was published, released / unsealed by the Eastern District of New York? Oh, we already have a question. Wayne Montgomery says, will they run these sentences consecutive or concurrent? Wonderful question. That depends. So if Robert Kelly decides to change his plea of not guilty and instead say, I am guilty, he may be able to work out an agreement with the prosecuting agencies to have all of these sentences run what is called concurrent. So here is the difference between concurrent sentencing and consecutive sentencing. So let's say someone is sentenced to 10 years in one count and 10 years in another. If those sentences are running concurrently, that means that they are serving actually not 20 years, right? But 10, because they are serving both sentences at the same time. But if those sentences are consecutive, that person is actually serving 20 years because they first have to serve the 10 on one count and then serve the next 10 on the other count. So Wayne Montgomery, it's possible maybe they can work out a deal with prosecution where they can have these sentences running, concurrently. But even so, he's still looking at 10 to 20, any way you look at it, right? So he is looking at a lot of prison time, you guys. All right, so I don't see any other questions. Give it a second. All right, so let's dive right in. I'm going to share my screen again, and we are going to look at the state of New York. Well, I shouldn't say state of New York. I should say the Eastern District of New York indictment. Full screen. Here we go. So here you see that they're telling you all the business here, right? July 10th, 2019 in the Brooklyn office. This is a superseding indictment. So this is not the first indictment, right? This is what I would call an updated indictment, right? The law calls it superseding, but I'm saying it in layman's terms so we all can be on the same page, okay? Eastern District of New York, Robert Sylvester Kelly, okay? The grand jury charges, and then they go into the charges. So here they start with the enterprise. That's your hint that they're going to start telling you what they are accusing R. Kelly of doing that was a criminal enterprise, right? That was a group effort. So here they say the defendant, Robert Sylvester Kelly, also known as R. Kelly, and individuals who served as managers, bodyguards, drivers, personal assistants, and runners for Kelly, as well as members of Kelly's entourage. So again, they are being very specific in saying this was a group effort on the part of everyone around Robert Kelly who allegedly were all involved in this and all knew what they were doing, okay? They then go on to say this enterprise constituted of a group of individuals associated, in fact, and engaged in activities which affected interstate and foreign commerce. So remember, interstate and foreign commerce, that's our federal trigger. That's how you go from someone being accused with a state crime, like in the people of Illinois v. R. Kelly, to federal crimes, okay? They then go on to say the enterprise constituted an ongoing organization whose members functioned as a continuing unit for a common purpose of achieving the objectives of the enterprise. A lot of legalese, right? All they're saying is, listen, this group of people were all on the same page. They all had a common purpose, and it was not an isolated incident. So it wasn't one time or two times or random. It was a consistent effort for them to continuously do these things together. That is the allegation. They then go on to say that the purpose of the enterprise, so now they're telling you what they believe the purpose was to promote R. Kelly's music and R. Kelly as a brand, and to recruit women and girls to engage in illegal sexual activity with Kelly. By promoting R. Kelly's music and the R. Kelly brand, the members of the enterprise expected to receive financial opportunities and personal benefits, including increased power and status within the enterprise. So they're describing here what some would call a quid pro quo, right? So they're describing that in exchange for being a part of this enterprise where these people allegedly recruited women and recruited girls, they got not only money, but also power and status because they get to bask in the light of this big celebrity, R. Kelly, right? They then go on to say that the enterprise traveled throughout the United States. Again, the federal trigger, the traveling while allegedly recruiting women and girls. They go on to talk about how they coerced some of these girls allegedly. And they say that at many of R. Kelly's performances, women and girls were invited backstage. These women and girls were often given wristbands, which signified that they were authorized to attend the event. So the accusation is that the enterprise would recruit women and girls, bring them to R. Kelly's shows to meet up with R. Kelly, and they were given special access to sort of entice them to come to these shows, okay? They then go on to accuse R. Kelly of giving his contact information to any women or any girls that he wanted to see again. They then say that he communicated with these women and these girls by telephone, including phone calls, text messages, iMessages, and FaceTime. As part of this communication, Kelly often requested that the women and girls provide him with photographs of themselves. Let's take a moment to break all of that down. Remember, we talked about the purposefulness that is in these documents. When you're looking at an indictment, nothing is an accident. Everything the government puts in there, they put it in there for a reason. So when you see them saying text messages, iMessages, FaceTime, you already know they're saying that. Why? Because they have text messages, because they have the iMessages, and because they have proof of FaceTime conversations. Also, when they're talking about the photographs, they probably have copies of those pictures and or proof that those pictures exist. All right. They then go on to say that R. Kelly allegedly facilitated the travel of these women and these girls, and that members of the enterprise would arrange for these girls to travel to wherever R. Kelly needed them to be, right? And make sure that they had lodging while they were there. So make sure they had somewhere to stay while they were there. Now it's getting juicy. Now they go into some of R. Kelly's alleged rules for his partners. A, the women and girls were not permitted to leave their room without receiving permission from R. Kelly, including to eat or go to the bathroom. The women and girls were required to wear baggy clothing when they were not accompanying Kelly, unless otherwise instructed by Kelly. The women and girls were not permitted to look at other men and instead were told to keep their heads down. And the women and girls were required to call Kelly daddy. Again, why would they say this, right? What would be the reason that they would want to include these quote unquote rules in the indictment? Well, if you're going to accuse someone of taking someone and forcing them to be engaged in certain activities, right? You want to establish that the person really didn't have a choice. So what they're establishing by putting these rules in the indictment is they're establishing that R. Kelly was treating these women in a way in which, first of all, they really had no freedom to leave, because you're kept in a room and you're not told, I mean, you're kept in a room and you're not permitted to leave, right? So that's the first thing. The next thing they want to establish is that he was brainwashing them, allegedly, right? They're not allowed to look at other men. They have to call him daddy. So the government is trying to paint a picture for you of girls who were not only being, abused and used in a sexual way, but being brainwashed and being imprisoned during the brainwashing. Okay. They then go on to say that the enterprise operated within the Eastern District of New York and elsewhere, including overseas. So again, they're hinting to you that these allegations also occurred when R. Kelly was traveling all over the world, right? Allegedly. Now they're going to get into some of the methods and means of the enterprise. So why is that important? It is important for them to discuss the method and means of the enterprise because no organization, no group can be ran without rules, right? Without conduct, without how do you do something and why are you doing it? So they are starting to kind of prove their charges, because here they're going to talk about how this group of people allegedly did these things and why they did these things. So here you see they just talk about facilitation of sexual activity between R. Kelly and these children. And here they say that the enterprise was recruiting these girls without disclosing a sexually transmitted disease that Kelly had and had contracted during the producing of these videos. As you guys can see, I'm getting the mush mouth from all this talking. Water. Okay. So then they go into demanding absolute commitment to Kelly and not tolerating dissent. Again, the means and methods of this enterprise. It's important to note that Kelly and his enterprise did not tolerate dissent, because that means that if there was someone present who said to them, I don't think what we're doing is right. I think what we're doing is illegal. We shouldn't do this. That person was punished. And that is another one of the telltale signs, right? And another part of the elements when you're talking about a criminal organization. Just like with the mafia and the mob and things like that, people are punished when they try to say, what we're doing probably isn't right. So that's why they're diving into that. They then say, allegedly, that the enterprise would obtain sensitive information about members and associates of the enterprise to maintain control over them. So when someone tried to wiggle a bit and tried to say, I don't think what we're doing is right, the enterprise, the group, would actively get information about that person that they could use to control them and or blackmail them. Again, another telltale sign of a criminal group. Criminal groups tend to have information over people, which they use to keep them from doing what? Telling the authorities about them, right? They then go on to say the group had the purpose of recruiting and grooming sexual partners from R. Kelly and isolating women and girls from their friends and family and making them dependent on Kelly for their financial well-being. Again, another callback to the brainwashing, the alleged brainwashing of the women and the girls, which plays right into the trafficking and the coercing and persuading someone to do things that they don't want to do. They then say that allegedly Robert Sylvester Kelly was the leader of the enterprise. They then go into some of the racketeering, right? As you can see, when we talk about the fact that different districts use different language, in Illinois, they said what? Minor 1 and minor 2. Here in New York, they're saying Jane Doe number 1, right? And Jane Doe number 2. So as I said, the Department of Justice is not a monolith. You have different agencies, different protocols, things like that. So here they say that with Jane Doe 1, there was an individual who did engage in some conduct together with R. Kelly, allegedly with this Jane Doe number 1, right? They then get into Racketeering Act number 2, right? So for Act 1, they're pretty much saying that R. Kelly may have not been the only person that was engaging in some type of conduct with the women and the girls who were there. And, you know, as far as pop culture goes, with the accusations that have been publicly made, it has been stated publicly that sometimes victims were allegedly made to have conduct with each other, and that there were also sometimes other men involved in some of this conduct, okay? They then go into Jane Doe number 2, and they accuse that Jane Doe was induced and enticed to go from one place to another and then kept in the second place against her will, okay? Then they get into the transportation of Jane Doe number 2, saying that she was transported. They get into another act of transportation with Jane Doe number 2. They go into Jane Doe number 3, right? So notice how many counts we have here. We're on count 4 just in the racketeering section. Again, they restate the same charges with multiple women. So now we're in Jane Doe number 3, count number 6. Remember, each of these counts, you're facing a minimum of 5 and up to 20, right? That's the range, okay? And again, we're going to Jane Doe number 3, same counts. Jane Doe number 4. So now you have 4 different individuals, the same accusations, okay? Now they're getting into accusation number 7, so count 7. Again, accusing that Jane Doe number 4 was transported for those purposes. They get into coercion. They talk about the fact that Jane Doe number 4 was allegedly a minor when these things occurred. So when she was transported and when the conduct and the activity with her occurred, she was allegedly under the age of 18, right? They get into transporting minors. And you're going to see that it's the same charges over and over again, just for each person, okay? So Jane Doe number 4, the same charges are repeated. And we're now on what, page 12 of the indictment. Jane Doe number 5, again, the same charges. We're now on page 14. The same charges being repeated for Jane Doe number 5. And then they have their forfeiture section, which we know is pretty much just them saying any money that was obtained from the conduct that is alleged in this indictment. So if in fact it's proven that R. Kelly did any of the things that the government is saying, and he made any money from these things, we want that money. That money belongs to us because he got it in an illegal way, okay? And that is the end of this indictment. This indictment is 17 pages long, okay? So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it in our chat so everyone has it. I'm also going to stop sharing. Control paste. Okay. And I see someone is thanking Pocket Watching with JT on his milestone. I think he made 10,000, am I right? Or 9,000? One of those, but congrats, JT, on that. So does anyone have any questions for me about
Okay, guys. So now that she broke it down for you guys, I hope you guys can understand how she broke it down. She broke it down. You broke that down. Awesome. I love the way you broke down each and every part, and you didn't even have to really go through everything, saying word for word, and we all appreciate that. Say hello to everyone in the chat, Miss Esquire.
Hello to everyone in the chat. Thank you for the compliment on the breakdown. My channel, our tagline is Life Lessons Through a Legal Lens. So I really come with the spirit of teaching and showing people how to find the law, how to read the law, how to understand it. So I really try to break things down as much as I can.
So my first question to you is, when you broke down the RICO, which is the racketeering in New York, why would they bring the charges to New York if he's not from New York?
So that's a good question. So the charges aren't about where the person is from, it's more so about where the conduct occurred. So if you see in the indictment, they specifically mention that they believe that there are victims who were taken from some other state and brought to New York, and that while they were in New York, they were abused. So that's the basis of them charging him in New York.
Okay. Okay. So Faith Rogers is one of his alleged accusers. She's Jane Doe number 6, I believe, in the New York indictment, the superseding one. As well as I believe Azriel Clary, which is Jane Doe number 5, also was brought to New York. So a lot of these girls were transported, in other words, from Chicago to New York, or from wherever their hometown was to New York. And that's why?
That's correct. Once the victim is brought to New York and there's conduct that occurs in the state of New York, then the state of New York can prosecute. And it's going to be a federal prosecution, as I said, because of the interstate element. So because the victim is allegedly being brought from Chicago, Illinois to, Bronx, New York. Now, not only do you have the fact that any entity in New York can charge R. Kelly, you have the fact that it's going to be a federal agency because there's interstate implications there.
Okay. And why can't they claim double jeopardy?
Another great question. So, as I'm sure you guys know, it seems like Diva was telling me you guys have been following this case, pretty well. So I'm sure you guys know that back in, what was that, 2000 and 2001, he was charged with creating a video with who they're referring to as minor one now in the Illinois indictment. So a lot of people are wondering, well, how is it that they're charging him with this same minor one, with the same videotape that he was acquitted on? Well, double jeopardy attaches to the agency that prosecutes the defendant. So, for example, the people of Illinois, the state of Illinois, they cannot charge R. Kelly with that tape with that minor ever again because it's double jeopardy. But he's not being prosecuted by the people of Illinois or the state of Illinois. He's being prosecuted by the Northern District of Illinois. So double jeopardy does not attach because it is a different agency prosecuting him.
Okay. So as well as they can also reopen the case, like you said, if they have new evidence. You mentioned that in your video, correct?
Yes, if they had an investigation regarding a different video or some other instance and they obtained more evidence, yes.
And you had also said that they were investigating him since his acquittal. And why do you say they were doing that?
So their press release, I believe it was the state of New York press release, they specifically mentioned when the investigation began. And they stated that the investigation began 20 years ago. So I just did the math and said, well, that's around 2001. And so what a lot of people don't know, just from a practical perspective, is once you're on the radar, you're on the radar. Especially with human trafficking, blank trafficking, things like that, especially with those types of crimes. Once you are on the radar, you're on the radar. So probably what happened is that once he started to be charged in the state of Illinois, that is probably when the federal government started saying, we're going to investigate. And so they kept investigating even while he was fighting those charges and even when he was acquitted. And, by their own admission in their press release, they continued to investigate even after he was found not guilty in that, state of Illinois case. So they said in their press release that they've been investigating for over 20 years.
Look at that. And people were saying that the investigation started in 2016, but in reality, they've been watching him since his acquittal, because in his conspiracy in the federal of Illinois, they state that he committed conspiracy, and this supposedly happened within the process of his trial from 2002 to 2007. So they've been watching him. I believe that too.
That is correct. They have been watching him ever since. They have never stopped investigating. As I said, by their own admission, that is what they said in their press release.
And that also means that Lifetime isn't the reason why they were investigating him either. Am I correct?
That is correct. And another good point to make, because I know there's been a lot of chatter about Lifetime somehow influencing the investigation. And based upon what they're saying, that's false. They're saying that they have been investigating and that probably Lifetime had nothing to do with it.
Lifetime was just a movie, to a docuseries, shall I say, to just bring awareness to the situation. Correct?
Yes, I would agree with that. And I think it was powerful in the terms of bringing a lot of awareness to the situation. I honestly think the general public didn't think that he was, first of all, let's have a real moment. The general public thought that he was guilty of that 2001 case. I mean, let's be real. I remember hearing people talk about the tape. I never saw it, but I remember people saying that has to be him. That has to be him. So once he was actually acquitted, I think most people assumed that R. Kelly did what a lot of us would do. Like, man, I got away with it this time. Let me stay quiet. So what I think the Lifetime special did was wake a lot of people up and really bring out the reality that it doesn't seem like he slowed down at all. It seems like he's still allegedly doing the same thing that he got acquitted for.
So why would they wait 20 years to charge him?
Well, that answer is simple. You cannot charge someone until you have enough evidence. So if they investigated for 20 years, it took them 20 years to get all of the evidence that they needed. When you're talking about crimes that involve this type of conduct, they are very difficult to prosecute because victims are afraid to talk about what happened to them. And these are the types of cases that you almost cannot do anything with the case if the victim isn't willing to cooperate with you. Now, some of these cases, they're saying, some of these charges, they're saying that they have videotapes. Great, but they don't have videotapes for every single incident, right? So these cases take a long time to investigate and a long time to prosecute, and you need heavy victim involvement. And that is always going to be challenging because victims of these types of crimes are scared to death. They are afraid that something could happen to them or their family. They're afraid the guy might come back and try to do it again. There's so many things. And then there's a psychological element. There's the shame that is attached to it. There are so many victims of these crimes that feel like it is their fault that it happened to them. And a lot of times it is a combination of fear and shame that prevent them from cooperating with the case. And yeah, that's going to take you 10, 15, 20 years to prove a case without the victim if you don't have victims cooperating.
Right. A lot of people say that Kim Fox illegally solicited accusers to come forward. Do you agree with that?
Well, here's what I will say. If the allegation is that she somehow is paying these people or enticing them to tell stories that are not true, then that is a crime. But if in fact she is encouraging people to come forward with stories that are actually true, there is no crime there, in my opinion, right? So
Thank you.
that's the distinction is, are they telling stories that are true? Because if it's the truth, she's not doing anything wrong.
Thank you. That's a lot of people have been screaming that in these YouTube streets. Another question is, so can they use the same tape from 2002 in these trials as well?
Yes, they can, because this is the federal government charging R. Kelly and not the state of Illinois.
Another question. Back in 2003, he was also charged in Florida with more child's pornography, but the courts threw it out due to an illegal search and seizure. Could they, when they suppress that type of evidence, do they return it back to the owner, or do they keep it in the evidence room for, say, safekeeping for, say, for instance, today's trials?
So technically, well, first let me answer the question of, can those tapes be used by the federal government? For the most part, they cannot. So there's a legal term called fruit of the forbidden tree, and it really just means if evidence is obtained illegally, it cannot be used. And it really cannot be used by anyone. But what they could do is the state of Florida could drop a hint to, the Northern District of Illinois and the Eastern District of New York, and they could say, "Hey, we were in possession of these things, and you may or may not be able to find them here or there," right? Give them kind of a hint and have them obtain it in a legal way, then they could use it. But if they're getting it directly from the state of Florida when it's already been ruled that the state of Florida obtained it illegally, that would be a problem for them. That would more than likely be thrown out and not be admissible. Now,
Ooh,
as far as, I think the next part of your question was, would they return it? Right. Okay.
right.
So as far as whether or not they would return that type of, material, highly unlikely, highly unlikely. So let's say you get arrested and you had your cell phone on you. When you're released, they're going to give you your cell phone back, sure. But if you had your cell phone and some cocaine, your cell phone and some meth, they're not going to give you the cocaine and the meth back. That's it. It's been seized because it's illegal.
Right. Okay. Okay. Um, my next question is, do you think that R. Kelly is getting his due processes?
So, to my knowledge, R. Kelly has a team of lawyers. And as I'm sure everyone, in the chat knows, a lot of lawyers is a problem. It comes with a lot of egos and a lot of back and forth. And so, my understanding of what is going on is that his attorneys are at each other's throats over who gets to do what. So it's, I want to do the opening. I want to do the closing. For those of you who don't know, opening and closing are a big deal, you guys, because it's your chance to show off how great of an attorney you are. So they're going to fight over that. They're going to fight over who gets to open, who gets to close, things like that. And so the issue that they are having is that when they're fighting over who's going to do what, they are supposed to be able to turn to R. Kelly for him to kind of make the final decision. But for whatever reason, the allegation is that R. Kelly is not communicating with them properly. So, if in fact that is actually what is happening, all these allegations that we've heard, then R. Kelly is receiving due process. He has attorneys who want to help him, who want to represent him, and they're trying to give him effective assistance of counsel, but he isn't really doing his part in the way of communicating with them. And there have been many reports, again, allegedly, that R. Kelly is very hopeless about this case. He's kind of depressed about this case, and that's why he's shutting down on the communication side. And that is not a violation of due process. That is just a defendant who's not cooperating.
Wow. Oh, and how do you feel? Do you know about his attorney, Nicole Becker, that she was involved as an individual in the Richard R. Line indictment, who is now pled guilty to the crime of bribery? And he had a plea deal, and they dropped the charges of witness tampering and just left it at bribery.
So I very faintly heard about that. And your question is, how do I feel about her being implicated?
In other words, well, what can happen to her being that she's implicated in the
Mm.
indictment as to knowing about the bribery.
Okay. So there's a difference between knowing about and being involved in. So, from a criminal perspective, she probably will not be charged unless they can prove that she was somehow involved in the bribery, not just that she knew about it, right? But from the perspective of her law license, she's in trouble. Of course, it ultimately comes down to the state that she's, barred in, as far as whether or not they really want to take it there. But being that this is a celebrity case and it's been in the press, it is likely that whatever bar, as I said, whatever state she's barred in, they will institute some type of discipline proceedings against her, because as an attorney, you are not supposed to be aware of something such as bribery, witness tampering, anything like that. You're not supposed to be aware of that and then allow it to happen.
And how about her doing actions as far as facilitating money to R. Kelly's girlfriend, Joycelyn Savage, who is currently with him, um, as well as his ex girlfriend, current girlfriend, Azriel Clary. Um, it's rumored to say that allegedly she was getting money from R. Kelly to just drop off the money to the girls.
So, from what I'm hearing, there's no crime there, right? Getting money from R. Kelly to give to someone else is no crime in itself. The crime would be some of the accusations we've heard with McDavid, right? So, things like giving money to someone in exchange for them to not testify, giving money to someone in exchange for a tape that is, illegal conduct. Those things are wrong. But if she was literally just getting money from R. Kelly to give it to these girls, I mean, from a realistic perspective, for all she knows, maybe Azriel Clary is his little cousin or something. And she's just giving money from R. Kelly to his family member. So, unless they're going to prove that she was giving them money for some illegal purpose, that probably won't go anywhere.
And with the discovery items that they have for the New York indictment, um, they have uh, digital footprints of the hotels. They have um, Uber receipts. They have bank statements of bank records from Daryl McDavid, uh, R. Kelly, and his other businesses. Um, Also, they have hotel receipts. They have flight manifests, and they also have text messages, iPhone messages, and they have 100 devices that they've been going through for almost a year. They also finally gave up some of the 100 device discovery to the defense team, and supposedly 2 weeks before the trial starts, the defense team should have all of the items from the 100 devices, which could be um, from cell phones to tablets to hard drives and things of that nature. And they supposedly broke that up into use certain portions of it that pertain to the case. How do they? How does R. Kelly's team fight that evidence?
So, as far as the actual text messages and things of that nature, I'm going to save that for the latter part of my answer. But when you're talking about bank records and hotel reservations and things like that, that is all circumstantial evidence. So, for example, if you're going to say that R. Kelly reserved a hotel room at the W in Hoboken for, what's today, the 20th, for the night of June 20th, right? And allegedly minor two was also in Hoboken. Well, that's some circumstantial proof that maybe perhaps he met up with this minor too, but that's not direct proof. Unless, in addition to this hotel reservation, you had lobby camera footage of R. Kelly having a conversation with minor two. You had hallway camera footage of R. Kelly and minor two entering a hotel room together, right? So
Right.
the actual reservation itself is circumstantial. They're going to need something else to connect that to say, this is how we're making the connection. Now, as far as the text messages are always going to come down to context. What criminal defense attorneys usually do to combat text messages is argue that there's some context that's not there. So it's similar to when, you're texting one of your friends and you say something that you mean as a joke, but they can't tell that it's a joke because it's a text as opposed to a conversation. That's the kind of argument that a criminal defense attorney latches onto. They say things like, well, you can't, he didn't mean that. He meant that in a sarcastic way, or that was a joke, or things like that. So they are probably going to combat the text messages by saying we're lacking in context to really understand what R. Kelly meant when he was saying these things.
Okay. Well, we've seen some of these text messages. Some of these kinds of text messages that he sends to these girls, they're like, say something, come to daddy, dress this way for daddy. Um, or he would direct the females to um text his handlers, aka handlers, um, to escort the girls to the rooms, to make sure that they had everything prepared for the girls. So there was text messages between R. Kelly as well as the handlers. So they have a lot of those types of things. How do you think those are going to go?
Well, those messages, first of all, the messages between R. Kelly and the handlers are going to help to prove the racketeering and the criminal enterprise charges. And those messages are going to be much more difficult to fight, right? It's not just a conversation between R. Kelly and a girl or a woman. It's a conversation where he's discussing with someone else how to direct that girl or that woman, which, like I said, not only speaks to the criminal enterprise and the racketeering, but also speaks to the idea that he was having conduct with these girls. He had them in homes where he could go and visit them. He was controlling them. He wasn't letting them leave. So, in my opinion, I think the text messages with the handlers are going to be very vital evidence because that's going to go to the heart of what was actually going on with him and these girls. The messages, as far as, whatever to daddy and this and that to daddy, those messages are good too, but the context argument is still there for those messages.
Okay. Okay. And why would they charge him with the racketeering as opposed to charging him separate with each case?
Hmm. Interesting. So you mean why did they choose the racketeering charge?
Yes.
Okay. So if you look at the Northern District of Illinois, their indictment really focuses on actual conduct. But then when you look at the Eastern District of New York, their indictment tends to focus on the racketeering and the criminal enterprise. And so what I think happened is that the districts were in communication with each other and they decided, okay, New York, it looks like you have a stronger case for racketeering than for actual conduct. We have a stronger case for actual conduct. So we're going to run with the actual conduct charges. You can run with the racketeering charges.
And racketeering charges are just a bunch of predicate acts rolled up into one indictment, correct?
Yes.
And do you see any injustices with this case?
I would say I see at the outset several things that could be injustices. One of the first things that caught my eye was similar to the Bill Cosby case. You have R. Kelly being charged with things that happened quite some time ago. You know, you have 1996, 1998, 1999, things like that. And it always strikes me as interesting when someone is being charged with something that happened so long ago. And usually, statute of limitations would have already enveloped quite a few of the things that we've discussed. However, the federal government has developed their own exception to the statute of limitations when it comes to these types of crimes. They released I guess you could say, a statement about it a few years ago, in which they said, we're giving ourselves leeway to increase the statute of limitations on certain crimes because we understand that the victims of these crimes are afraid to come forward. And we do not want to punish someone who may have been a minor or who may have been really young when they were victimized by not allowing them to come forward once they become an adult. So at the outset, there could be, you know, some perceived injustice there on R. Kelly's part because he's being charged with some things that happened, I mean, when I was 5 or 6 years old. But the flip side of that is the government wants to encourage people who were victimized when they were younger to come forward. So that's the first potential injustice that, you know, jumps out at me. And the second potential injustice that jumps out at me is on the part of the actual alleged victims. There are a lot of people that are saying things such as, well, these victims want to be there and they wanted to go with R. Kelly and they said yes. And that strikes me as an injustice and very unfair because the allegation is that these girls were underage. And for apparently, there's some people who don't know. So I have to say this. For those of you who didn't know, someone who is a child cannot consent. You cannot say that a girl who is 12 or 13 years old wanted to go with a man, wanted to be with a man. That is absurd. A child cannot give you consent by law because psychologically, they cannot understand what they are consenting to. So those are two things that immediately jumped out to me as an injustice, potential injustice.
Thank you for that statement, sister. That's like the biggest argument in these YouTube streets, the age of consent and the whole victim shaming and blaming portion on these YouTube streets with these young ladies. Now, one of my sisters had a question. She said, how much of the evidence do you believe can be thrown out?
Well, it is going to be up to R. Kelly's defense attorney to make these motions in limine, which I was actually enlightened earlier by Diva that one of the attorneys has made, I think, 2 motions in limine. So I would imagine that they are going to try to motion in limine out anything that has to do with the past trial. So that trial that happened with the state of Illinois v. R. Kelly, I would imagine that's the first thing they try to get thrown out. They try to say, well, we shouldn't discuss anything that stems from that trial because it's prejudicial, right? I would also imagine that a lot of these text messages, again, they'll make that argument that we're lacking in context and we don't know if R. Kelly is actually the person who sent this text. That is another thing that is troubling about text message evidence that a lot of people don't know. Just because a text message is sent from my cell phone to Diva's cell phone does not mean I sent that message to Diva. So any criminal defense attorney worth their salt is going to go for the argument of, we don't know that Robert Kelly sent those messages. We know that somebody had his phone, but we don't know that he sent those messages. So if I was his defense attorney, that's the next thing I would go after is all of those text messages. And then the third thing I would try to go after is these criminal enterprise charges. I would try to argue that these people were not doing things because I said so. They were just doing things that they wanted to do. And I try to knock out some of the messages and go between R. Kelly and McDavid and Brown and all these others.
Now, my next question is, why would R. Kelly settle with the girls in a civil suit if he was innocent?
So civil suits and criminal cases are extremely different for one major reason. the level of proof. The level of proof in a civil case is much lower. And honestly, civil cases usually cost more money. A lot of people don't know that, but civil cases are so expensive. So a lot of times, if someone has the money, if they're a celebrity or a corporation or a company and they have the money, they'll just settle just to not have to go through a trial where there's a lower burden of proof. So they maybe could be found responsible. And also where they're going to spend all this money paying probably more than one lawyer to deal with the case.
And what about if for the young ladies who signed NDAs and got paid in these settlements, and if they were underage without a parent being present to sign these NDAs, are these NDAs valid?
Those NDAs are about as good as a wet paper bag. So there are a number of reasons why those NDAs will more than likely
What?
be thrown out by a court, and those girls will be told, you can speak about everything. So here's the first thing. Contract law recognizes just how criminal law recognizes that a child is too young to consent. Contract law is the same. You cannot contract with a minor. That doesn't mean anything. A minor cannot give you consent to anything. And if you think about it, even in the simplest perspective, if your child is a model or an actress or anything, your child isn't signing contracts. You, as the parent, or the manager, as the legal guardian, or some other type of adult is entering contracts. You cannot enter a contract with a minor. So an NDA with a minor means nothing unless there's also the signature of some type of legal guardian.
Now, one of the girls asked the question, what about the ones that, like I said, had been settled? Can they still use those girls to testify? Like, say, for instance, Geronda Pace. She was one of the girls who settled with him, as well as Anita Carter. She settled with him. Can they still use them to testify? Because they're in, one is in the state of Illinois' case, and the other one is in both cases. As far as the, actually, I think Geronda Pace is in all three.
So are you saying that these NDAs were actually signed by adults? So Geronda Pace was an adult when she signed this
No,
NDA?
she was 16.
Okay, so same answer. Again, it may differ from state to state as far as the age of consent for a contract, because maybe in whatever state she was in, if Illinois, there you go. Maybe in Illinois, you can sign a contract at 16, perhaps. But if Illinois law doesn't view a 16-year-old as an adult, then again, that NDA is invalid. She has to have been an adult or have a legal guardian or someone, something like that in her life that also signed this NDA.
So now with the two girls that settled out of court with him, and they're charging him now, they can still use these girls to testify against him and bring charges forth?
Absolutely. Again, if these NDAs were signed when they were minors, I will also add that one of the things that you must know about the law is that everything is gray, right? So if they were minors, of course, that NDA, forget it. But there have been instances when NDAs have been thrown out. So if the Northern District of Illinois and the Eastern District of New York want these witnesses bad enough, they can take that NDA into a sealed proceeding, into a closed proceeding, and try to argue to a judge that the NDA should be thrown out so these girls can testify. They can make the argument that it was improper for R. Kelly to try to create a contract that would render him impenetrable for criminal prosecution. So, in other words, they can make the argument, Your Honor, it should be illegal, it should be invalid for someone to make a contract that shields them from being able to prosecute, being able to be prosecuted. It's past my bedtime. That shields them from being able to be prosecuted for committing a crime. Your Honor, contract law does not support contracting to protect yourself while you commit illegal activity. And then the judge would decide. But that is an argument that has been made. There are cases in which people have argued that NDAs and other things should be thrown out because it's protecting someone who committed a crime.
Now, one of the young ladies has said, Robert said in a lot of these suits, he didn't know he was told to settle and do your job. They were going to take care of things.
Okay, so they settled. I mean, settlement is not an admission of wrong. It's usually when someone settles, very rarely do you have any type of admission of any wrong. Usually a settlement is just a settlement.
So she's saying that R. Kelly didn't know that he was settling out of court with these girls, is what she's saying. Now, is that possible?
If in fact, if he's saying that he did not know, which the allegation is that he cannot read or write. So if we're going off of that allegation that that R. Kelly cannot read or write, then yes, it is possible that he did not know that he was settling with these alleged victims because maybe he could not read what he was signing. However, if he is trying to make that argument, he better be ready with attorneys to fight the lawsuits that are going to come from those attorneys that were involved in that settlement. Because accusing an attorney of having you sign a settlement that you didn't know was a settlement is malpractice. And if he accuses any attorney of that, they are going to come after him for defamation. And that's defamation per se, which means they have an even lower burden of proof than regular defamation because you're coming at them for their livelihood, for their job.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's deep, sis. Another question. Is there any way these NDAs were done without his knowledge?
Again, kind of the same answer, right? If he allegedly cannot read or write, then maybe the allegation is that he did not know these people were signing NDAs. He didn't know this, didn't know that. Yes, that's possible. It's possible that these NDAs were done without his knowledge. However, that does not help him. If he's saying he didn't know about these NDAs, that makes them even more invalid. Because how can you not know about the document you're trying to use to protect yourself?
Right. Thank you for that answer. Now, another question. What exactly is kidnapping? Now, R. Kelly's being charged with kidnapping. Can you explain that?
So kidnapping is when you take someone either by force, by some type of fraudulent persuasion, or by some type of coercion, and you move them from one place to another under the same force or threat or fraudulent persuasion or coercion. So here's what that means practically. Kidnapping could be that somebody hit you over the head, you passed out, they threw you in a van and they took you somewhere. Yeah, that could be kidnapping. But kidnapping could also be, if you don't come with me, I'm going to hurt you. If you don't come with me, I know where your family lives, I'm going to hurt your family. That could also be kidnapping. You could kidnap someone without ever putting a mark on their body.
That's I've been saying that, as far as what about they say that one man cannot be an enterprise. Is that true?
I mean, technically that is true, right? One man in themselves is not an enterprise, but that is not the accusation. And I think a lot of times, this is why on my channel, I bring up the indictment and I read the indictment. And it honestly is intriguing to me that people get upset with me for reading the indictment. I'm like, you're mad at me for reading the indictment, right?
We go through that over here too, girl.
I'm like, how are you? I'm sorry, but you're upset with the wrong person. I'm reading the indictment.
Right.
But that statement about one man isn't an enterprise, that statement is disingenuous because that's not the accusation. The accusation is not that Robert Kelly by himself was an enterprise. They're very clear in the indictment about what they're saying. They're saying R. Kelly, his managers, his business manager, his road manager, Daryl McDavid, June Brown, his, what else did they say? His assistant, his producer. You see
Entourage.
how many different people they mentioned?
Now, why
Entourage.
is it
They
that
mentioned so many different people.
it says the United States government versus Robert Sylvester Kelly and not Robert Sylvester Kelly and Daryl McDavid, Bubba Smith, and Alan Jones, and so forth and so forth and so forth?
Well, actually, in the New York indictment, they are listed, right? In the New York indictment, it does say Robert Sylvester Kelly, Darrell McDavid, and Milton June Brown. It does say that. But the
That's
reason
the
why the
federal. That's
Northern
the
District of
federal one,
Illinois,
right? That's the federal one. Why is it that
right,
in the
right,
record
right. That's
hearing
what
it's
I'm referring
only
to.
R. Kelly?
Mhm.
In the New York one, it only says R.
Oh,
Kelly.
okay. So,
That's the
so
record
anywhere
hearing.
where they only mention him, right, right. So any charging document where they only mention R. Kelly, that's not going to be because the other people aren't being charged. It's going to be because this document pertains to R. Kelly. Each person is going to have their own charging document, their own arraignment, their own bail/bond hearing, right? Everybody still has rights. So there's a separate indictment that probably lists everything that pertains particularly to Darrell McDavid, another one that lists everything that pertains particularly to Milton Brown or whoever. So when you're looking at Robert Kelly's charging document, it's really going to focus on the charges against him.
And what is the Mann Act? I think you're muted.
No, I'm not.
Sorry, I thought you were muted. Did you get to hear what I said?
No, I didn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. What is the Mann Act?
Okay, so the Mann Act refers to the transfer of women or girls for the purpose of using them in, I don't know if you say you said you say whatever on your channel, right? So you don't mind
Yeah, girl, you could
as far
talk
as what words I
freely.
use. Okay. Okay, so the Mann Act refers specifically to the transportation of women and girls for using them for what the government calls immoral purposes, but they just mean any type of illegal sexual conduct. So that's what the Mann Act is. The Mann Act is the transportation of women and girls for some type of illicit behavior.
Now they were saying that it's sort of like prostitution. So what are they trying to say, that R. Kelly treated these girls as such?
So they are hinting that. Now, remember, they also talk about forfeiture, right? And they keep saying, oh, well, any money, we want that money. So they are hinting that R. Kelly was allegedly allowing other people to interact with these girls and perhaps receiving money for that. They're also insinuating that he was perhaps allowing other people to view these tapes and perhaps receiving money for that. And I think they're low key hinting that there might be a market amongst celebrities for this type of behavior.
Ooh, wee, that was some juicy tea, sis. Woo. And we know that there are certain people in these cases that are getting immunity. Now, two questions on this. Why would they get immunity? And what type of immunity are they receiving?
So they would get immunity, as I had mentioned, because these cases are difficult to prove without witnesses. So they want all the corroboration they can get. So, for example, let's say I'm just making up a random name. Let's say I am Kate Spade and I used to be R. Kelly's assistant. And they know that maybe I recruited a couple girls, but what they also know is that I was with R. Kelly for 2 or 3 years. So I can testify that I saw R. Kelly with all these different girls that are underage. So the government is going to say, you know what? She's worth more to us as a witness than if we were to try to prosecute her. So they would then, come to Kate Spade and Kate Spade's attorney, and they would enter an immunity agreement. Now, I can't predict what type of immunity that would be, but what I can say is if I were representing one of these people who is seeking immunity, I would be seeking what I call complete and total immunity. I would want the immunity agreement to say my client, Kate Spade, is immune from prosecution stemming from any type of conduct at any time at all that stems from any of the allegations that are noted in this prosecution. So that means anything from 96, anything from 96 on through now.
Wow. And so when they get these immunities, so they're safe from any type of charges, you're saying?
They could be, as long as it's written right. But again, like I said, it's a negotiation. These immunity agreements are not a stock agreement. It's
Okay.
usually a negotiation between prosecution and defense counsel. So the terms of it is going to depend on how good their attorney is.
And do you think that they offered R. Kelly a plea deal?
Well, that's an interesting question. I personally don't think they did. And there's no real legal reason behind this. This is just my personal opinion. My personal opinion is that this is a big time press case. And it's making all of these government agencies look really good. And I just can't imagine them wanting to shut that down. So I don't see that they offered him any I don't see it possible they offered him any type of plea deal, at least not yet. And I think when they do offer him some type of plea deal, it's going to be something ridiculous that he's going to be like, what's the point of taking that kind of deal?
Now, one of the young ladies had asked, would they have to show proof of what they are saying for that immunity? Or can they lie and everything is okay? This is the R. Kelly supporter, by the way.
No, they have to show proof. Yeah, they have to have proof. An immunity agreement is not verbal, it's written.
So in other words, the person has to write down a statement and make it true to the word, right? In other words?
Well, no, the immunity agreement in itself would be written and it would have a signature and seal of that federal agency and then the signature of the person who is being given immunity and probably that person's attorney as well.
Okay, so it's not just some written statement, it's like a legal binding document.
Yes, it's more so like a legal binding document. It's not a written statement as far as the witness saying what they saw. It's a
Right.
written agreement that says what the witness is going to get in exchange for their testimony.
Okay. And how does a jury wind up being sequestered?
So in this case, I
Partial.
believe yes. So in this case, I believe they've mentioned sequestering the jury. Usually that happens when you have a case where there's a lot of media because the court is going to be concerned that a juror is going to see some news article or something on Twitter or Instagram and that's going to sway them. So what will probably happen is that they will keep the jurors separate, literally separate from society. Now they're saying partial sequestration, so I'm thinking that maybe they'll be allowed to go home because usually with full sequestration, you're not going home. You're in a hotel or you're in some type of housing. You're not allowed to go on the internet. You're not allowed to have your own type of smartphone or anything where you could go on the internet. And you're not allowed to really speak to anyone outside of the jurors and the court personnel. So for partial sequestration, I don't know, maybe they let them go home. But the point is to keep them from being swayed by the media.
Okay. And so a sequestered jury, that would that necessarily mean that they would be hidden in the courtroom as well, or is it just for the safety of them being harassed by media or outside entities or persons?
Yeah, sequestration has nothing to do with visibility in the courtroom. It really more so refers to, like I said, protecting jurors from being swayed by outside influence. That's really what it's about. Now, could they choose to keep the jurors non-visible in this case? Yes. And they may choose to do that to protect them from, being attacked, because there are so many really zealous people involved with this, that maybe they have some safety concerns for the jurors, and maybe they will try to protect their identity. But that's not generally a part of sequestration. Sequestration, again, my bedtime, is really about keeping the trial fair. Sequestration is about the protection of the constitutional rights of the defendant. So it's about making sure that you have people who are fair and impartial and not being swayed by others.
Now, if, say, for instance, some supporters or someone decided to have a banner fly in the sky um, during the trials and say something like "Free R. Kelly, he's innocent," is that tainting the jury pool? And is that illegal?
That would depend on the specific parameters of that case. So there's really no clear black and white on, what is considered to be tainting a juror pool. There are some things that are really, really egregious. Like if you say to a juror, you need to find him not guilty, then that's obviously tainting them, right? Or for example, what Maxine Waters did in the George Floyd case, where she said, oh, well, if we don't get a certain verdict, then we're going to, or then you should seek justice or whatever. Statements like that are insinuating that the verdict should come out a certain way. But what you've just described kind of sounds more like supporters trying to, I guess, be supportive of R. Kelly in a way. So I can't see that resulting in any type of criminal prosecution or anything like that. But what could happen in that instance is that whoever did that could be fined or held in some type of, contempt of court, if the court establishes that all of that conduct is not acceptable.
Okay. And there's a question here that says, do they do polygraphs in court anymore, and can they be ordered?
Polygraphs are not really viewed. So polygraphs were never truly viewed as evidence. That was never really a thing. But there was once a time when they were considered to be very, very probative, which is just pretty much means very, very useful. But as time has gone on, it's really been discovered that people can fake polygraphs. People can teach themselves how to pass a polygraph. So they're really not viewed very, very favorably anymore. And they're definitely not going to be something that a court would just accept as evidence.
Okay. I'm going to I don't know if you guys would like to call in with quick questions or just continue typing your questions. I'm going to have her here for about another 10 more minutes. We've been on for about 2 hours, and we're like 10 minutes over the 2 hour mark. So I'm going to give us about like 10 more minutes, and then I'm going to let our lady go. So are there any other questions that you guys would like to ask Miss Esquire? Okay, here we go. I found one. Herpes has different types of strands. So if they have the exact same one as him, it proves he gave it to them. He did get them meds for the herpes with his personal. Okay, so in other words, how can they prove the herpes?
Right. So she is absolutely correct. If they have a similar strain, then yeah, they can make the argument that, hey, they received this STI from Robert Kelly.
And let's see. Any other questions? Let's see here. Okay, that was about the NDAs. We did all that already. Oh, they're asking a question about Michael Avenatti. Avenatti was supposedly one of the lawyers who was holding the video in a chain of command for Kim Fox's sexual assault case. Now, Is that violating any type of law?
So if Avenatti is saying that he had this video for the purpose of preserving it for the use in a lawsuit or in a criminal case, then no, he's not
No, it was
violating any
given
law.
to
As
him.
long as
Right. Yeah, it was
he,
given
was
to him.
given. Right, right. Yeah, it was given to him and he's keeping it for the purpose of it being used in court, then no, there's no law being violated there.
What about if he wound up bringing it to the news media first before giving it to the lawyers?
So, if in fact this is a tape that involves, as we know, someone who's underage, or if the victim in the tape did not want the tape to be shared with the media, then yes, you have a potential crime there. Because it is a crime for you to either, as we know, exchange video footage that has minors, but it's also a crime for you to exchange video footage that has someone depicted in the video doing something intimate and they don't want you to share it. That is also a crime.
Okay, and can they throw this videotape out if they find that to be true?
That's a sticky question because the fact that Avenatti allegedly gives the videotape to some media outlet, that doesn't really speak to where the tape originally came from. So is it nice that he did that if in fact he did? No. But that doesn't affect the fact that he was given this tape by, Kim Fox allegedly or whoever this person is. So the source of where he got the tape from is what's going to determine whether or not it's admissible, so that probably wouldn't affect its admissibility.
Okay, very interesting. Also, how do you think the case against R. Kelly will end?
Well, unless R. Kelly is able to strike a really good deal, I do not foresee him being able to be acquitted on all of these charges. There are just so many different counts that I don't think it realistic to think that he could be acquitted on everything. And quite frankly, I think that R. Kelly will probably, unless he strikes a deal, spend the rest of his life in prison.
Now, another question: can he try to strike a deal even while his trial is going on?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. A defendant can change their plea and have and enter some type of plea deal right up until there's a jury verdict.
Interesting. And now he also has a public defender as a standby lawyer. Um, Judge Donnelly had said something about the CGA, which is the Criminal Justice Act, right? And she decided to
Right.
represent him with a public defender, correct? Now, this public defender is supposed to be the lead attorney. So, can this change anytime during the course as well? And my other question is, the other lawyers are still retained. Can that be changed?
So a client can terminate an attorney at almost any point in a trial or in a case. Now the judge may intervene if the judge is concerned. So let's say, for example, you're halfway through your trial and now you want to fire, your two or your three attorneys. The judge may say, I'm concerned for you, defendant such and such. You're trying to fire your entire team. Are you sure you want to do this, et cetera, et cetera? But at the end of the day, the court will usually allow a defendant to change counsel, fire counsel as many times as they want because they are concerned about being overturned because the defendant will argue, well, you didn't allow me to exercise my right to have counsel and blah, 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 So to avoid that, they're for the most part going to allow someone to change counsel as much as they want.
Okay, that was great. That was great. Thank you so much, Miss Esquire. I appreciate your time and your knowledge. Um, and I hope we can do this more often. Like I said, we can get together. And I have a couple of things here that I wanted to talk about as far as legality goes. And I would love to have you again on my platform if that's good with you.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to come back.
All right, guys, we're going to have her back again one day. I want to go over the People versus R. Kelly one of these days, which is it was put in the appellate court of Illinois for the first district. And this was a document from 2009, and it was about his 2008 trial. And it was okay, Damien, Edun, Rosenbaum, both of Chicago for the appellants. Oh, okay. So Justice Robert E. Gordon delivered the opinion of the court, and then it's I don't. I'm gonna share my screen to see if maybe you can understand what this paperwork is, and kind of just let me know what it is. Okay. Okay. Can you see the screen? Do I need to make it bigger?
Make it bigger if you can.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Do you see what it is?
Okay, so this is an opinion. This is an order. Yeah, this is an order issued by a judge. So whenever a judge is ruling on something that they think needs some type of explanation, they actually do an opinion. So it looks like this is an opinion where the judge is going to explain whatever their decision was.
Oh, so it's the judge's opinion.
Yes, the judge's opinion.
Okay, I thought that this was coming from the Chicago Sun Times or whatever the.
No. That's this is the judge's opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay, yeah, I would like to go over this one day. It's 27 pages long, girl. Do you think you can hang out with me that long again?
Yeah, I think we could.
Okay, awesome. Because I would like to talk about this opinion piece. So we could definitely do that one day. I'll schedule another live and have you come back with me, my people. Thank you guys. If anyone send me some cash apps, I think I did. All right, I got one cash app. If anyone can show us some love to the host and to our guests, that would be wonderful. My cash app is $ DivaDivineLight, or you can PayPal me, DivaDivineLight. And thank you so much for coming, guys. And this was awesome. I hope all you guys can understand a little bit more of what he's facing. And I hope I answered everybody's question, as well as Miss Empire. I mean, as Miss Esquire answered all your questions to the best of her knowledge as well. And if you guys ever have any other questions, you can always email me, diva.josh.32332@gmail.com. For the next time she comes on, I can always just ask questions. That would be awesome. Thank you so much for coming, guys. I love yous. Please do not forget to hit that like button. And if you are not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel, guys. Hit that notification bell. Don't forget. I love y'all. And Diva Divine Light is out. And my lady, Miss Esquire, is out. And thank you so much once again for coming. Peace.